Everybody, welcome in, welcome in. Thanks again for joining us for another lesson, taking the time to cook with us. My name is Alex Doros, here for my third lesson here with Homemade. So happy to be here and part of the community. Today I'm joined here by my friend Lisa, who's going to help moderate, and also an amazing teacher here. We're also joined here by our friend Adeli from Savory Recipes, and we'd like to give a big thank you to them for sponsoring this tres leches recipe with strawberry compote. You may have had tres leches before, but you may not have had an Ecuadorian tres leches. And if you're asking what's the difference between an Ecuadorian tres leches and say maybe a Mexican tres leches or anywhere else, it's a complicated answer. And the topic of who has made tres leches, who invented it, that's also kind of a bit of a debate. Kind of like Russians and Polish folks might argue about vodka or arepas for Venezuelans and Colombians. There's a lot of debate about who invented it, but it's agreed that it comes from Central America. And many folks say Mexico, other folks say Nicaragua. And I'm gonna walk you through some of the process of what we're gonna do today. So first we're gonna go ahead and make a cake batter. And while that's going, we're gonna get some strawberry compote cooking as well. That's gonna simmer with a few ingredients with some rum. And then we're going to make a meringue topping, which is the most traditional topping for tres leches. And then we're gonna top everything, assemble, and eat. And so we're gonna start right now by making the cake batter. And so we've got our electric mixer, and what we're doing here is we have these 5 egg whites here. And so we're first basically adding these to the mixer and beating them, whisking them with the whisker attachment. And we are trying to peak the egg whites. And so what we're doing is turning on the mixer and getting this to about a medium high speed to get them to start foaming, changing consistency, and they're gonna start really getting stiff. And so we're gonna keep doing this on about medium high speed for about 5 minutes or so until we really see the foam starting to develop. It's lost a lot of that kind of runny consistency, and I'll show you what it's supposed to look like at its endpoint. But in the meantime, we can get going on our strawberry compote. So we're getting this pan going, this little stock pot here, simmer pot here, to about medium high, and we're gonna add some butter. This is about 2 tablespoons, 2 to 3 tablespoons of butter, and we'll get that going until it's foaming. So we're gonna heat that up until the butter is starting to foam, definitely not to the point where it's browning. And this is kind of the base to saute some of to cook the berries, but also before we cook the berries, we're gonna start to kind of caramelize the brown sugar and really give it some of that flavor and color, but this is primarily for flavor that we're doing this. And our eggs, it looks like they're starting to foam, but nowhere near where they need to be. So we're gonna turn this up quite a bit to continue peaking the eggs. But let's see what it looks like right now. Let's see if they're done. How do we know if they're done or not? We'll turn this off. And we can take off the whisk attachment. One of the best ways to know is to dip it in and see what it does. Does it hold its peak? It does. These are at basically what we want to call a medium peak. And so they're kind of folding over, you'll see, folding over on themselves. If it's a hard peak, then they would stand straight up and stay stiff. They're not stiff, they're at kind of a medium peak, which is what we want. So we're at the point now where we want to add the sugar, but first I'm gonna get the strawberries here because we don't want this butter to burn. So I'm gonna get this turned down, and we're gonna add the sugar. This is about 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. Brown sugar, again, really helps with that caramelization and some of the flavors there that we have to incorporate into the berries. And we're gonna kind of continue stirring that gently and let it cook for just enough for the sugar to kind of melt and incorporate into the butter. That's probably about a couple minutes. Can crank this back up now that I know it's not gonna burn. And once this sugar is all the way cooked off, starting to incorporate into that butter, we're going to add the rum. And why are we adding rum in the compote? You don't necessarily have to add rum. That's totally optional. If you want to stay away from alcohol, you can. The alcohol is going to cook off, so there's not going to be any actual alcohol content in this compote. It's not going to be a boozy compote. I guess you could make it a boozy compote if you want, but you are not going to want that taste of the alcohol itself in the dish. We want to cook that off. We're getting this more for the flavor, and so this sugar here needs a second here to keep it's starting to change its consistency, and as I stir it, it's no longer in kind of granule form. It's now in liquid form, and it's starting to incorporate with that butter. So we're just about ready now to add the rum. And one of the things that makes this tres leches an Ecuadorian tres leches versus other places is often the incorporation of alcohol. So that's why we're incorporating rum into this compote. Rather than adding alcohol or spirit into the cake itself, we can add it to the compote. And so in Ecuador, and we're getting some hot splatters there with the sizzles. Make sure you're careful as you pour that in. Turn it down, and then we can kind of continue stirring that a little bit. We got about a quarter cup of rum here. And now is a good time to get those berries in there. Once we cook this off for about a minute max, and we'll make sure that we coat all these berries in the sugar. Now that we've got those cooking, give it a good stir, and I'll continue with my cake batter. So we'll coat, make sure none of the sugar is sticking to the bottom too much. It's all incorporated. And then we're gonna let this do its thing for about 10 to 15 minutes. Get as much of that sugar off the bottom as you can. That's also gonna help you with cleaning. If you can save yourself from doing dishes, that's a nice thing. We're gonna get this going and leave it on kind of a medium speed here. And we're gonna slowly add our cup of regular granulated sugar. And so we're gonna do this little by little to help maintain that foam and the peaking of the egg whites and not break the egg whites. So little by little, increase the speed just a bit. Little by little, you're gonna keep doing that. Slowly pouring in. Patience is your friend with this one. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the aspects that, again, make this Ecuadorian. What truly is Ecuadorian about tres leches? We talked about the incorporation of liquor, aguardientes, and anise flavored liquor that's often used. Other things are the fruit topping. So in Ecuador, you might see more traditionally pineapple, passion fruit, fruits that are a little bit more traditional to the region itself. But it's up to you in terms of the topping that you use. If you want to go the most traditional route, you can go with either of those options. Those are great. But the components that make a tres leches are agreed upon having 3 forms of dairy. So that's the tres, 3, leches is dairy, and so milk. And in our case, we're using 2 forms of fresh, so we're using cream and whole milk, in addition to sweetened condensed milk. If you want to go the most traditional route, or say you have a can of sweetened condensed and a can of evaporated, you could do that. But one thing is definitely clear, you're going to want to use real dairy. This is not a recipe where you can very easily substitute dairy for, say, like a non-milk alternative and get that same result. You're really going to want actual dairy for this. And so it looks like that sugar is somewhat fairly incorporated, and we're going to continue now with adding the rest of the ingredients. At this point, we're going to add the egg yolks. I'm giving this just another stir here with the compote. Make sure we're still doing all right here. It looks like we are. And we had a little bit of a rum explosion here, but I'm not mad about it. It's all part of the game with cooking. You got to give yourself a little grace. Things get messy sometime here. And at this point, we are going to add the egg yolks. These are 5 egg yolks that were separated earlier. And separating them can be kind of a pain. Personally, I found the easiest method was actually using your hands and basically letting the egg whites fall through your fingers, just kind of separating your fingers and sift them through. I found that to be the best method. That's what we did for this. And we're going to continue incorporating that just a little bit more. before we start folding in the flour. We're using all-purpose flour, and we're using whole milk as well, and so we're gonna fold those in. When I say fold those in, I mean we're going to not whisk them, we're going to use a spatula. Still fairly peaked here, but we're gonna kind of continue just incorporating. And then here also I have, for flavor, we have the vanilla extract. Now we're going to incorporate that. And what I was talking about with the folding of the ingredients, we're going to turn off the mixer, I'm going to remove the attachment, and we are going to, with the spatula, add the other ingredients here. And so here we have the whole milk. This is about a 1/3 cup here. You can be a little bit liberal with this. It's okay to have a somewhat moist cake. We want this cake to be pretty moist. Again, it's gonna get soaked by all these delicious dairy ingredients. So it's all right to have a pretty moist batter, more moist of a batter than you might be used to. And then now we are going to add the flour. This is a 1.5 cups of flour, and we're not gonna dump it in all at once. So when we say fold it, we're going to do it little by little. Fold it in, fold it in. We're gonna pour, we're gonna fold, little by little. If you pour it in all at once, you're gonna have potential clumps of flour. One of the other things we do is we sift the flour ahead. That also helps to remove clumps. So we're gonna kind of continue folding in this flour here. And so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spray this. Here we have this cake pan here, and I'm gonna spray the sides as well. And then we're gonna get this batter in here. I'm curious if there's anyone who's ever kind of done this thing by hand, who has the patience to sit and whisk eggs by hand, right? It's a lot of work. I used to do it. I didn't have a KitchenAid for many, many years. I did it by hand. And it's still worth it, I tell you. So we're gonna continue to pour this batter in, make sure we don't over pour. We don't want to pour more than about 2/3 of the way. It looks like there's still just a couple little flour clumps there, and so we'll mix it in just on the very top there, not too much. We did a pretty good job, but we don't want any of those flour clumps in there, so I could have been more diligent with the mixing. Be more diligent than I was. Learn from me, y'all. This looks like it's now incorporated. Did a better job now of continuing to mix it, so there's no flour clumps here, and we'll now get this into the oven here, and it's ready to go. All right. And so again, we are baking this for 25 to 30 minutes. Lisa, if you could help me by setting a timer, we'll set it for 23 and check it. And then we're going out now to the next step, which is the meringue. And so for the meringue, we are peaking egg whites again. The difference is we are peaking them more. And so in the past we had stiff egg whites. For the past we had medium egg whites, and for this one we're gonna have much stiffer peaks. And so here we have our second egg whites. For this one, it's the egg whites from 3. And if you're wondering, what do I do with those other egg yolks? Something that's always fun for me to do at home is to slightly cure them. So I put them in a little bit of soy sauce, and if you do that for about a few hours, you have kind of like that consistency of a sunny side up egg if you're into that. I love just putting it on a bowl of rice with some pickled veggies, something like that. All right, so now we've got this here. We're gonna get this going again to medium speed and crank it up just a little bit here, medium high speed. And this will probably be going for about 3 minutes easily before we start to add the sugar. And so for that last time I was talking about, we use regular granulated sugar. For this one, we're gonna use powdered sugar because we really wanna make sure that, again, we have a very, very smooth, hard peaking egg white, and it is possible to overmix them. So you can beat them, you can whisk them to the point that they're breaking, and you'll see some of the yolk is kind of separating from that almost cream-like consistency of a harder foam. And so to prevent that, one thing that you can do is add just a little bit of acid. So it's gonna taste good, which is nice. It's a benefit, but really you're doing this so that it doesn't break. You don't need much, so we're really just gonna do just a little bit of a squeeze here, and maybe it's about a teaspoon max. So it's partly for flavor, but really it's gonna help so that we don't break those egg whites with the meringue as we keep going. We're gonna crank it up here. All right, 30 more seconds. Start to add the sugar. Again, little by little so that we don't break this. And that citrus, the acid from the lemon is gonna help, but we still wanna add the sugar little by little to help with that. So, you start adding, keep going. And Chef Lisa, how are you doing on time for the baking of the cake?
We're at 10 minutes. 10 minutes left.
Great. And so that we don't waste this powdered sugar, we're gonna incorporate it, push it down, get in there, powdered sugar.
I love how the room still smells like butter in here.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
so excited as it's baking.
I tell you, it's hard to fight hunger with that smell. Things are starting to come together here, smell-wise. The olfactory system's kicking in. I am getting hungry. So we're gonna continue incorporating this here. And we're gonna check out this meringue here, but it's looking like we're getting pretty glossy and shiny. Shininess is one way that you can tell with the look of this. And again, what I was saying about shaving cream. We're looking for that shaving cream type consistency. And it's like, if I take this, it's really peaking. It's really going kind of like straight up and holding most of its form.
That looks really good.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much there. So we're gonna leave this in the mixing bowl and just kind of basically spread it directly on top of the cake once we're ready to go. But at this point, I'm gonna say that the 35 minutes, the 30 minutes has passed, and show you what it looks like when it's done. And so this was, again, 350. But because every oven cooks a little bit differently, maybe you're using different pan size or the material of the pan, check it before that 30 minutes. So check it at 28 minutes. And for me, this was exactly 31, and that was the right time with my oven. And so always cook less and then check for doneness after that. And so this is kind of the point where we want it with the doneness. And so we're gonna kind of get ready to soak the dairy, and this is where patience is gonna reward you. So here we have, again, this is sweetened condensed milk, which is classic across almost all tres leches, regardless of the country. And then we're also using heavy cream in addition to whole milk. I already whisked this together separately in a separate bowl, so that's the step that you're gonna wanna do at home. We're gonna pour that in, and it's already looking like it's more dairy than this cake wants to hold, but we're gonna let it slowly soak in and do its thing here. I'm not gonna pour in too much so I don't cause a dairy disaster here, but we're gonna continue letting it to soak in there. And then another thing that we can help is giving it a couple little pokes here to let the dairy soak in. So that's gonna kind of help a bit. And then we're gonna continue cooking this down, and it's really starting to bubble quite a bit, and it's getting syrupy, but we're not quite there yet. So I'm gonna get this going with the meringue. In the meantime, we're almost at the point where we wanna eat. I'm gonna try and put it in kind of 3 somewhat even globs and then spread it, but do what makes sense to you. The point is to really just make sure the layer is even. And couple of the traditional toppings that we were talking about were cacao powder. That's something that is very traditional to South America. Cacao grows in Ecuador, and so we're going to sprinkle just a little bit on as a garnish and just kind of make this look nice, but it's also for flavor. It's subtle, but it is going to make a difference. And then we're going to do that same thing with some cinnamon as well. And then here we have the compote, and it's starting to set a little bit. You can see when you move this pot around a little bit, we're getting more of that syrupy consistency. The more we let it cook down, the more we let it cool, the more syrupy it's gonna get. And we're gonna kind of spoon this on top. We're gonna not put too much of the liquid. We're just gonna use a little bit here and there. We can also drizzle some of that sauce directly on each piece to kind of make it kind of look nice and artful on the plate as well. And this is the part where you get to be a little bit creative and think about how you want to present it and add your little finishing touches to make it yours with the creativity. And for this one, if I were you, I would use a flat bottom spatula. It's going to be a lot easier than if you use, I think, like a pie spatula that's triangular. Just with the shape of this, it's soft enough that you're going to want a lot of surface area. It can be pretty saucy, so I would recommend a plate with some lips. And what do you think, Chef Lisa? Should I serve some up?
Yes, let's plate it all up. I'm so excited.
All right. And it's going to be a little tricky getting this first slice out. Let's see how well I can do it. The first slice is always the ugly one.
I believe in you.
The moment of truth. There we are. We see it's starting to definitely soak. It's soft to some degree, but you're going to get an even softer tres leches by giving it more time than I did. It's still a soft cake. Some of that dairy's in there. You're going to get it all the way penetrated through by soaking it for at least a few hours or overnight. We only did it for not even 20 minutes. You saw that? And it's still a pretty soft looking, tasty cake. So hopefully tastes good as well. Moment of truth. Satisfied.
That looks delicious.
It's definitely got a lot of those rich, decadent components. I can taste the different forms of dairy, but the berries are really, to me, what brings this to life and makes it a distinctive tres leches from a lot of those that I've tried. So this is a recipe I'm going to repeat, and I hope that everybody enjoyed it at home. I know there's a lot of nuances. It's not the most simple recipe. It takes a little bit of patience, so if you were willing to try it at home, give yourself a pat on the back for even going down that route and cooking this on a Monday night. Hope everyone is enjoying this and want to make sure that everybody goes to check out savorrecipes.com. Thank you so much to our sponsor for supporting this class, and make sure to check out some of what they have in terms of helping you cook delicious food at home. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. Happy cooking, happy eating tres leches. I think it's only fair that I share some with Chef Lisa and everyone else here.